The reality is that much of that world doesn't understand what it says. Because Arabs only make up about 20% of the Muslim Ummah. This is the sad state of affairs which Muslims find themselves in today. And we need to realize this and to be involved in concerted efforts to educate ourselves and our children and our families to the Arabic language. Not out of a desire to be an Arab, meaning out of a dissatisfaction of one's own background and one wants to change one's nationality, no. But because of the fact that the Quran, the word of Allah, is Arabic. So when we listen to the Quran today, we listen to the recitations of Abdul Basit and Abdul Samad and others, and we are moved. Actually, we're not moved by the Quran. We are moved by the singer. Quran has become, for many of us, music. We are touched by the musical quality of the Qari. And even in these places where people specialize in this, you find, as in Europe, the French and the others, they like to invite cultural acts from different parts of the third world. They will come to Paris and they will perform on stage for the entertainment of the Parisians. Some of these Qaris have gone to Paris and recited for the entertainment of the French and others. And you just have to listen to some of the recitations, where you hear the person reciting and he makes these dramatic, pauses, and you hear people in the background, Allah, 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 Allah. Allah yaftah alayk. This thing. It's just like a pop, the way people respond to the pop singers, That's what it has become, unfortunately. So for us to be able to truly be touched by the Quran, we must learn Arabic. Not just to be able to parrot the letters, but to understand what Allah is saying. The difference that it makes in Salah, to know what you are saying, is something that you cannot grasp until you learn what you're saying. So each Muslim owes it to himself or herself to learn enough Arabic to be able to understand what they're saying in their Salah, because the reward for Salah depends on the degree of consciousness that we have of that prayer. And to be able to taste the beauty of the Quran as it was revealed, this can only take place in Arabic. Now, when we look at the presentation of the Quran, this is a very important point for da'wah purposes. When we're giving the Quran to non-Muslims, and actually for a number of Muslims maybe who have either converted to Islam or woken up and began reading the Quran, they may find the Quran confusing. I've heard many non-Muslims say that. I read the Quran, but it's confusing. Orientalists, they will commonly say that. It's a confusing book. Because of the fact that the way in which the Quran presents its information, it doesn't seem to follow any kind of pattern. When a person picks up the Quran, having read books and has grown up reading books, where books usually tell you a story, Characters are introduced in the first part, then a plot is developed, then a climax is reached, and then some kind of conclusion, the story ends. Now when you pick up the Quran, of course, it doesn't follow that pattern. And this is what causes a lot of people to find it confusing. They're expecting something like that, but it's not. Instead, what you find is the Quran presenting concepts of faith. The believers, the hypocrites, the disbelievers. Then it changes into speaking about paradise and hell. Then it talks about Adam and Eve. Then it goes into laws. Then it shifts into descriptions of creation, the heavens and the earth. Then it goes into talking about the people of old. And then it shifts back into Salah. And the topics are just coming randomly. They seem to be just coming without any discernible pattern. So for a person who is used to reading storybooks or manuals where things are presented in a systematic way, the Quran is found to be somewhat confusing. However, if we consider that the Quran is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking to humankind, Allah is communicating to the reader directly. God is talking. If we consider it from this perspective, and we think, how do we talk? If we sit down and talk for a couple of hours, do we talk like storybooks? Do we talk like manuals? No, we don't. We may start talking about one topic, then something comes to our head, and what about so and so? We start talking about that. For a while, then something else comes up. We start talking about this and that and so on. And actually, if you now put that whole conversation together, it will seem as though you are talking about random topics, very similar to the pattern of the Quran. The fact that you know the person whom you're talking to, and you have certain things in common, this is what links all of that which appeared to be random to somebody who was not there, who wasn't present. They just heard your taped conversation. They may not be able to link it all together because they're not familiar with, or they don't have that familiar foundation. So it will appear to them to be random talk also. So when we understand that the subject matter of the Quran is humankind, human beings. This is the subject matter of the Quran. This is what Allah is talking about. Human beings. He's addressing human beings. So everything in the Quran is somehow related to human beings. Whatever Allah is talking about, it comes back to human beings. Either human beings in their relationship with Allah and things connected to it, or human beings in their relationship to other human beings, to themselves, or it's human beings in relationship to the world in which they live, the physical world. One way or another, the subject matter remains essentially human beings. And the main theme of the Quran is the message which all of the prophets were sent with. As Allah said, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا. Allah said, I have sent to every nation a messenger. أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Commanding the people to worship Allah and to avoid the worship of false gods. That is the essential message. Worshipping Allah alone, avoiding false gods, and submitting to Allah in our personal lives. Submission, Islam. That is the theme which links everything in the whole of the Quran. Now once a person understands that and they go back and read the Quran, then everything now falls into place. That's why it is important, if we do give the Quran to others, that we should make them aware of this difference, that this book you're about to read is a unique book. It's different from any other book that you've ever read. That's where you start from. Don't expect what you normally read. And you should understand it is God talking to you, and He is addressing your relationship, how that relationship should be with Himself, with yourself, with other human beings, and with the world in which you live. Now, the uniqueness of the Quran is not only in its mode of presentation. Its uniqueness lies in its inimitability. That is, it is not possible to imitate its form and style. It is a miracle in and of itself. Now, to understand the miracle of the Quran, one needs to understand, first, Prophet ﷺ had pointed out that all prophets were given something which would cause people to believe in them. Miracles were given to prophets to convince the people to whom they were sent that they were prophets of God. Because why would people submit, follow them? Anybody can pop up and say, I am a prophet. Prove it. That's the purpose of the miracles, to convince the people that they were prophets of God. So as Prophet ﷺ said, all prophets were given something which would cause people to believe in them. The thing which I was given is none other than a revelation, the Quran, which was revealed to me. So I hope that I will have the most followers of them on the day of judgment. Now, miracles, when we look at the miracles of the prophets, the miracle of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was not only the Quran. See, some people mistakenly think that his only miracle was the Quran. No. He had a number of other miracles. When he was in Mecca and the pagans challenged him, he told them to look at the moon. And when they looked at the moon, it split in front of their eyes. One half went down one side of the horizon, the other went to the other. The splitting of the moon. Now the story that you heard, that when Neil Armstrong went to the moon, that they discovered the crack where the moon was cracked in half, that's nonsense. It's not true. Nor did he hear the adhan whilst he was on the moon. This is not true either. I know. Unfortunately, we got all these stories going around amongst us, right? You know, when he went to visiting Cairo, he heard the same thing, and oh, that's what he heard, and he became Muslim. Not true. Neil Armstrong is a non-Muslim senator and remains such as such. Okay? The moon split. We don't have to find the crack. It's not a requirement for us. We are informed by the Prophet ﷺ and his companions that this took place. This was among his miracles. Among them, on one occasion, when he was giving da'wah to a man who doubted his prophethood, he told him to look at a tree which was nearby. When he looked at the tree, he called the tree, and the tree came up to them. Okay? This was a miracle. That convinced the man. It was enough. Another occasion, when he was with his companions on the desert for one of the battles, they didn't have any water, they ran out of water, they needed to make wudu and to drink. He told them to bring bowls, and he put his hands in the bowls and water started to come from between his fingers and fill the bowls. Everybody was able to make wudu, they drank. On another occasion, he and a couple of his companions passed by a woman's house, and she had a goat outside, and he asked her for some milk. And she mentioned to him, or pointed to him, that the goat was dry. Its udders were dry, it had no milk. So the Prophet ﷺ told her, bring the goat, and he rubbed his hands on the udder. It filled up with milk. They filled bowls of milk, they all drank, gave her back a bowl of milk, and the udders remained full. And the woman said, from that time the goat gave milk until it died. Okay? It was a miracle. And there are others, I'm just mentioning some. Okay? Similarly, for Jesus, miracles were given. For Moses, miracles were given. For all the prophets, miracles were given to convince the people that they were prophets of Allah. And what you find in general is that the miracles that were given